We want to welcome you out to our City Council meeting for Thursday, July 7th, 2022. Our opening will be provided by Councilmember John Adams. We're going to excuse Councilmember Hunt. She is not feeling well, so she's not with us today. I'll turn the time over to Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Mayor Tran. I'm going to offer up a prayer, but before I do feel like I should say just a few words. I think the tragedy is the understatement word for what happened on Monday. And I want everybody to know just how deeply sad we are as a community, as a council and staff, and that our hearts and prayers are with the Hill family. I would be remiss if I didn't mention how incredible this community is. We were at the balloon release, a few of us the other night at the Patriots cheer, and it was incredible to see everybody gather together and hug and sharing emotions. And to me, it reminds me that really we all are in this together, and that we love each other as a community. And it reminds me that it's important for us to remember the things that we share and possibly bring those up in conversations prior to or before saying things that we don't agree on. And so with that, I'll give an opening prayer. Our Father in heaven, we come before Thee at this time as a city council and as a body and as citizens of not only this great city, but also this great nation, with humble hearts and sad hearts as we mourn the loss of one of ours. And we ask Thee to please bless and be with the Hill family, and be with all of those who are in need of Thy extra help and support at this time. May Thy light spread upon us and lift us up, is my prayer in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
If you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much for that, Councilmember Adams. We now have call to the public, and we don't have anyone signed up to speak. And so we will move to the swearing in of our new police officer. I'll turn the time over to Chief Oberg. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased tonight to introduce our newest officer, Peyton Van Hoff. Peyton, if you could come up here. Peyton's been with us for about a month. He started his training. He just barely graduated from the Weber State Police Academy. He's got a clean slate, but he's doing an outstanding job thus far. He's got his family, mom, dad, brothers, and fiance and a son in the back. And so we'll have Anne-Marie swear him in, and then his son Emmett would like to pin his badge on.
Fantastic. Thank you.
They want to see you. Okay, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. I, Peyton Van Hoff. Do solemnly swear. To support and defend. The Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of Utah. To perform my duties. As a police officer for Kaysville City.
Thank you, family, for being here. That's neat to see such a great supportive group.
Thank you, family, for such a good young man.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, it's great. Okay, now we'll turn the time over to the Major Brent Taylor Foundation for a presentation. Do we have a representative here from Davis Remembers? No? Okay. All right. Do we have any conflicts of interest to declare before we move on? No? Okay. Seeing none, let's move on. All right, our first action item today is the rezone of 42 North Angel Street from RA to R114. I'll turn the time over to Melinda.
Thought I had a few more minutes to prepare.
Oh, go ahead and take your time.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So before us this evening, we do have a rezone request that's been submitted for the property at 42 North Angel Street. The property is 0.554 acres. It's just over 24,000 square feet. There is right now existing a single-family home on the property. It's zoned RA, and that zone has a minimum square footage requirement of 21,780 feet. With the zone as it sits on the lot, only one house would be allowed. The requested zone is R114, which has a minimum square footage of 14,000 square feet. The density entitlement with the zone change would still remain as one single-family dwelling. So this is kind of a unique request. We don't see things like this very often, but when I get a little bit more into the presentation, we'll explain, and the applicant is here tonight to go over what their intents are with the property. But this is an aerial view of the property at 42 North Angel. You'll see back behind the lots, there's 2 flag lots. The intent of the rezone, if it's approved, would be to shift those property lines and have that front lot that has the full frontage on Angel Street be a smaller lot, which would be a more affordable property for Mr. Clifton's son to purchase and own, and then the remainder of the property that's taken from that front lot would be dispersed through a lot line adjustment to the back 2 lots. So this is just another aerial view without that overlay that shows the other properties and what exists there. The middle lot does not have a home on it, but the intent would be to have a 3rd home built on that property. The zoning that surrounds the area, you can see the R114 request. There are properties in the vicinity that are similar. You have A1, R114, there's some R120 to the south. When we present a zone change, I always like to go over with the council some of the differences between the existing zone and the requested zone. So most often a zone change would be requested so you could get higher density. Again, this is a unique situation. They're not intending to do anything more dense than what exists. It's just really manufacturing a better financial position for their child, who is a full-fledged adult. It was just weird to call you a child there for a minute. But the minimum lot width, there's a difference of 10 feet between the RA. R114 allows 90 feet. Building height allowance is the same. Front setbacks are the same. Side and rear side setback is the same. And then there is a difference between the rear setback of 30 feet at the RA and 15 feet for the R114. This is the property as it currently sits. You can see that front lot that fronts Angel Street being just over a half acre, and then the 2 back flag lots. Again, if the zone change is approved, this would be the intent to just have the lot line shifted forward on that front lot, creating a smaller property, and then the land would be dispersed between those back 2 remaining lots. So this does fit into the some of the goals and policies in the 2019 general plan. We're not changing this from a residential zone to something that's not residential, so it fits within the goal of keeping Kaysville a primarily residential community. With growth and development, one of the things the plan promotes is to have a diversified and adaptable to changing conditions. I think we're all very aware of the cost of land, the cost of building, the affordability of properties and housing. So this rezone is one that would really create diversity with those lot sizes there. And then we'll talk a little bit more on some of the following slides about the affordability. But in general, the housing, it states that west of I-15, we look for medium, for similar housing densities in existing neighborhoods. So going back to that zoning slide where we looked at, there is some R114 in the area. So that is within the existing character of the neighborhood. Again, the housing area, let's see, just talking about some of those existing zones there, that there are some, I don't know if that's the right slide, once again, but there is R114 in the neighborhood. And so that change to the R114 would not be out of character. Again, the plan for additional moderate income housing, this is something the state has brought a lot of focus to in the last few years. It's very debatable as to what affordability is and what's affordable. But again, the intent of the project is really to create a smaller lot, which would, smaller lot size would be more affordable. So the R114 would allow the Cliftons to reduce that minimum lot size to as few as 14,000 square feet, although their intent with what they've established, if the zone change is approved, is that it would be about 16,000 square feet. So we did have a public hearing at the Planning Commission meeting on June 23rd, or excuse me, June 9th. We mailed out 31 notices for that public hearing. We mail out notices within a 500 square foot or 500 foot radius of the subject property. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on June 9th. We did not receive any comments at the meeting, nor did we receive any comments beforehand. And the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to send a recommendation of approval to the City Council. So we do have a recommendation here for the City Council tonight based on the findings in the staff report and the recommendation of the Planning Commission. We recommend the City Council approve the rezone request of 42 North Angel Street to go to R114. If you have any questions, I can try and answer those. And as I said, the applicant's here this evening as well.
Thank you, Melinda. Would you like to come up and we'll see if we have any questions from council for you? Will you state your name, please?
My name is Paul Clifton. I'm Cody's father. Of course, his wife is with us, Kristen. I don't know if you have specific questions. I can give you a little bit of background of what brought us to this point. 4 or 5 years ago, it was recommended that we maybe go ahead and subdivide our property out there. It was a little under 2 acres, I think about 1 3/4 acres. And we were going to give our daughter the back half acre to build on. And of course, we lived on the front half acre that fronted 42 North Angel Street. And so we made 3 lots, essentially half acre plus. And the middle lot has been vacant all this time. Now, this is really a twofold effort. Our son, who's been living in Kaysville, or Layton, wanted to be back in Kaysville. And land has just gotten, obviously, you guys know how land has appreciated. So to make it a little bit more affordable for him, we're trying to reduce that that square footage of the property that our house sits on currently. And thus, a lot line adjustment was requested. And to do that lot line adjustment, we had to reduce the size of that front lot less than the RA, the half acre, essentially. And that's what this is really about. Now, I mentioned it's twofold. Another reason, that middle lot, and don't have the picture up here, it was the smallest of the three. And as you guys are probably aware, the lane itself takes quite a bit of square footage on a flag lot situation. And so our wife and I, we would appreciate a little more room to do what we wanted to do on that middle lot that we wanted to build on. So, questions?
Okay, thank you. Council, do we have any questions? No? Okay, thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Just question for staff. So, Nick, do we have to redo the flag lot overlay zone with it?
No, if
Okay.
it's had that on it, that will.
It just stays with it?
Stay with it, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, we don't have anyone signed up for public comment on this item.
Can I make a motion? You'll entertain one?
Yes, sir, I will.
I will make a motion that we approve this sweet family gathering. It's everybody's dream. Nobody get in a fight, all right? Rezone of 42 North Angel Street from RA to R114, single family residential district.
And I will happily second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments, council? No comments? Okay, let's start on this end. Councilmember Jackson.
A. Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Good luck. I wish my kids lived on both sides of me. That would be great.
May I make one additional comment?
Sure, come up to the mic, please.
This process, for the individual citizens out here, it can be a little bit intimidating sometimes. Your community development department has been very good. They have answered questions patiently for those of us who are not familiar with a lot of the, those ordinances and zoning regulations and that sort of thing. I don't patronize. I don't do that. But I do believe in giving credit where credit is due. And your community development department deserves credit for the work they do. Just wanted you to know that. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good luck. Well done, community development. Good job. Okay. Nick, I went out of order. I forgot the consent item. Should I finish this and go back, or should we go back?
Yeah,
now?
you can go back or you can take them right now, however you'd like.
Okay, let's do that, guys. Let's go back to number 5, consent.
I'll make a motion to approve consent item A, approval of minutes, June 2nd, 2022.
A second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Comments? No? Okay. Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you so much. All right, let's move to action item B. A resolution amending fiscal year 2023 compensation schedule for city officials and employees. Turn the time over to Shane.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm sure Anne Marie, Melinda, and Nick all knew that you missed the consent item, but I missed that you missed it. So thanks for catching that. This is largely a cleanup item. You just barely adopted the compensation schedule for fiscal year 23, but we neglected a couple of things, and we're trying to just clean those items up. And those were outlined in your packet. I hope you got a chance to look at those. 2 power department ranges were established, as well as the range for our mental health professional in the police department. We struggled finding a comparable with him, and so it took us a little bit more time to get a good range for that. But we wanted to add that to the fiscal year 23 plan, and if you have any questions, I'm available for that.
I do.
Councilmember Blackham.
I understand the mental health thing is very valuable, but I also feel like we need more data. And the reason I say that is we only have one city that we've been able to compare that data with, and it's a city that has a population of 135,215 sworn officers. It's not a very good comparable to me. I would like to see some comparison with some of the mental health officers for Davis County. I know Davis County provides mental health. Down in Farmington, they have some offices where they have mental health, where they have social workers and that. And I feel like I'm just trying to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars. And I think, and even I understand we tried to contact our person that we do salary surveys and he just didn't have any comparables. He didn't have anything that he could use really. And so I just think we need more data. I understand the power one and I understand the journeyman. We have a lot of data on those. We have a lot of comparables. But I think I see this going much higher than a patrol officer 3. And I think a patrol officer 3 is, in my mind, was pretty comparable to something like this. And it is quite a bit more than the victim's advocate is. And so I think there should be some data. I'd like to know, because I know Davis County has many mental health officials that are social workers and deal with this kind of thing. I think there's a lot of comparables out there. They may not be in municipal police departments, but I do think there are a lot of comparables.
A couple things. Thank you, Councilmember Blackham. You're right, this has been a challenge because we don't have a lot of comparables. We are a mental health therapist. I think Mr. Stewart is an LCSW, is that right, Chief? So what we did try to compare to was LCSWs. So whether they work for a city or they work for the government or they work in the private sector, that's who we're comparing to, and we know that they're in desperate need right now. So that's another tough employee that we have to keep up with the private sector. We did compare to the West Valley, and although they are bigger, the job is the same, and that's as we compare our police officers to bigger cities, they're still police officers. That's who we have to compete with. So we tried to match with West Valley, and maybe Chief, if you could remind me if we did. I didn't even think about the Davis County. I don't know what their if behavioral health has a lot of mental health therapists that we could compare to, but I know we did a lot with the private sector and with West Valley. And sorry, one final thing. This does not change what what Stewart is making, and it doesn't change what the power department people are making. We're establishing a range where he's making the same as he was making before with the increases.
So it doesn't give him a raise.
This doesn't change anything like that. So.
Yeah, I didn't do a comparison with Davis Behavioral Mental Health or Salt Lake's mental health group, and I'm sure Weber and Utah County have one too. I looked at municipals, and the only one I could really find was West Valley, and so I sent it to City Hall, and I know Dean and Levi looked at they looked at their networks and tried to find something, and Levi told me he thought that West Valley was the best comparable, and so that's why we presented it. There are certainly, private sector, I think, would push it much higher. I don't know what DBH
see, and I'm not smart enough to know, is it a PhD? I mean, is it a full
master's
doctor? Is
degree.
it a PhD? I don't know all that. That's why I need to be educated more on it,
It's a master's program, and then there's about, I want to say 2,000 hours of intern hours, or maybe it's 4,000 supervised hours that he has to do, or whomever has to do after their degree.
And that's what I'm wondering, if the comparables for the Davis County are those that are same education, same type of thing, and we're comparing apples to apples kind of in the job market. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think we'll have some better comparable opportunities next year, because I know there's some other cities looking at this. Like I said, I don't know what Davis Behavioral makes, but I do know that Stewart's had 3 job offers since he's been with us, and they're all for about $140, which is much more than he's making with us. But he's committed here, and he's trying to do a good job. And I don't think he ever expects to make that working in government, but you know, I would hope that we can establish some kind of pay range so he's eligible for some kind of increase, because right now he's not.
Because I mean, I'm right at this point, I mean, we do already have it. We did already approve it in the 2023 compensation plan. I mean, it's already there at a level.
What we approved was his top out is what we hired him at, is what was approved.
And I don't know how much money. I know it's 4 years of grant money. It's not really, it's grant money. So whatever this position ends up being, if we decide to keep this position in the 4th year, we're going to have to figure out where to come up with that
Sure.
Extra money. And right now, where we have had a difficult time meeting the budget as is with payroll, I just think it's a good idea to get some data to make sure that we're doing the right thing based on more information.
I think one of the problems here is we're leading out on this, and you can say that's good and you can say that's bad, and I think it's tremendous. But as a pioneer in this situation in Utah, data is going to be hard to come by. And we can look at the ones you mentioned.
I think that's just it. I think as far as the mental health industry, I think there's a lot of that in the state of Utah. I mean, I do think there's a lot of governmental mental health people.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, thank you. I was up at McCady Hospital recently and speaking with their folks, and they said they've seen a dramatic increase in mental health issues, especially young kids. And I think I agree with Councilmember Blackham. I would like to get more data, but also I think it would be important, just kind of a refresher of the nature of the job and what the day-to-day job kind of looks like, and if you could just kind of recap that, because I think that is just as important as the data.
Sure. A typical day for our therapist might involve meeting with a couple officers and talking about, you know, their PTSD or whatever, treating their mental issues. But it would also involve putting together trainings for the department and the city, meeting with our, like the fire department personnel. Like on the 4th of July, we called him, hey, we need you to come out. We have some firemen and women who are really struggling with this and having a hard time with that. He came out on the 4th, met with them. He's putting together a debrief for that also on Monday for all city personnel, but one specifically for public safety. He also reviews our cases, so we will refer cases to him, not for him necessarily to take action on, but he'll refer cases, or he'll look at cases, review cases that we send him involving mental health to see, you know, how we performed, if there was something that we could do differently or better, but also to kind of gauge threat levels and hey, maybe we can do this for this person, refer them here and get them some help, or establish relationships with their family so that next time they're in crisis, we can actually have somebody else that we've established a relationship with, whether it's him or a family member or another therapist or something like that. He works closely with Davis Behavioral Mental Health to kind of monitor some of our population that you know, is in need of services and kind of gauge where they're at on some things. So that's kind of a snapshot, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you elaborating on that, and I do think it's really important to have that training because you get a lot of folks out there where it can escalate very quickly due to mental health issues. And with that training, you can have a much different outcome versus not. So I appreciate that.
Exactly.
So, Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Oaks.
So I don't, if I understand correctly, the maximum, state grant, here's what we hired, we got them for a few years. I don't have a problem with, that's my question there. My question is, as we go through these next couple of years, I'd be interested in caseload, you know, what is it across? I mean, if West Valley, what the size of their force and what the city, if they do it, is this something that we could maybe go in with Farmington or Fruit Heights? Well, I hate to say Fruit Heights, but I mean, with another city and be able to do a share, you know, is Kaysville small enough where someone, where normally we could,
Yeah, I think there's some potential to do something like that, certainly.
because I share Councilmember Blackham's concern that at the end of this time, it says, okay, now we have another $100,000 plus because all the benefits that we're now having to budget for, which may be necessary and may be a good thing, but just, that's my thought.
Yeah, it's a good thought.
So.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. Is it taboo for you to tell us how much that initial, because I remember approving the grant or talking about the grant, and we talked at length about how awesome this is.
How much the overall, like the grant?
Yeah, like divided by 4? Because I'm just trying to look at, like, these guys are acting concerned about giving him a chance to be able to make a little bit more over the course of the 4 years that he's working with us, which, again, I think is any employee wants to have the opportunity to be able to, increase and do, especially like you go over to the hourly here at $34, that's only $20 more an hour than Chick-fil-A or whatever. Like, it's not, anyway. But if you tell me that the grant money makes up for 68 grand, or
I would have to go back and look. I'm sorry, I can't remember.
No, because for me, that's why I just think this is more. I think it's smaller than what we're really thinking. Like, I think the grant. You guys know what his current salary is. You don't have to share it, but do you know what it is?
Yeah.
And so, you can ballpark, but how much? Say we gave him. Say he was able to achieve the maximum, which. So I understand that nobody really does right away, right? We just kind of incrementally.
It would be a 3% increase he would be eligible for over what he's already.
Okay.
Only 3%.
3%, which is a very, very, very small amount, in my opinion. By small amount, I mean in comparison to our budget. Mm-hmm. And I think that, like has been said, this is the mental health issues we're dealing with right now are so imperative that we get on top of this, and especially with, like you said, with the officers. I hope that it'd be a requirement that they meet with him once a month or something, And I think we talked about how this next 4 years will give us a chance to really decide, is this something we want to continue to do? But we don't want to lose him and have turnover every 4 months because we weren't willing to shell out $5 or $6 grand of our own money on top of the grant just to give him the chance to progress. So for me, it's very much a no-brainer to at least give him the chance to be able to progress. And we're not shelling out this full amount. It's just whatever the difference is between the grant money and this.
Thank you. Are you ready?
I just want to make one more comment too. I think it's easy to look sometimes at law enforcement and our firefighters and to think they can handle a lot more than the average person when they come to a scene. But at the end of the day, we're all people. We all go home to our families and hang up the badge, or you folks hang up the badge. And I can't even imagine what you go through mentally to try to come down after a horrific day, as we saw during the parade. And so I think this is well worth what we can do to make this, at least the next 4 years, the best possible, and to maximize that time, get that data, and see how it benefits our folks. So.
Thank you so much.
May I make a motion?
Absolutely.
I motion that we approve a resolution amending the FY23 compensation schedule for city officials and employees.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have no one signed up to speak. Do we have any comments? Okay, Councilmember Blackham.
Nay.
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson?
No, aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 3-1. Thank you. All right, we will move on to our work items. Work item 7A is Main Street Revitalization Plan discussion. I'll turn the time over to Shane.
Thanks, Mayor. We're looking forward to moving forward with a revitalization plan. And while it's not perfect, we believe that we're at a point where we've gone through a committee process. It's been almost 2 years. We have involved some community stakeholders. We have this committee that's put this together. And the most important piece of this is that we've involved UDOT, this is their right-of-way. And they have agreed verbally to everything that's in this plan. Now, this plan is not perfect. It's going to need to be tweaked. But we feel like it's at a point where we're ready to go and get some money. Let's fundraise. Let's take this to the taxing agencies in our community and see if we can use some RDA, CDA funds on some of this. And all of those decisions will be yours at a later date in what we do and do not do in this plan. But we did recently take this to the business owners, the business and homeowners along this stretch of road. We had some really good feedback. A lot of the feedback we received was about parking, as you might be aware. And we're going to move forward on, we've already engaged our engineering team in looking at parking and things that we can do today that really have a lot to do with this plan, but aren't things we need to wait on either. So we're going to look forward with some parking changes, regardless of if we're able to do any of these other items on this plan. So we'd like to adopt this plan. We want you to understand it's imperfect, that it's going to change, and we're going to need to continue to engage the community in anything we do here. But we want to take this to people and say, this is a concept we'd like to do. Will you help us do it? And that's really what we're looking for. And of course, this is a work item. We're open to negotiation and discussion here and answering questions. Obviously, Melinda's going to be a great resource here as well for us on this plan. So,
thank you, Shane. I just wanted to add my little thoughts here. We've had open houses and discussions. We invited the stakeholders a couple weeks ago to come in, and they gave us some great feedback. I'm really excited about moving forward with this plan because based upon our statistically valid survey and our questions that we've put out to the community, they'd really like to see Main Street revitalized. And so this is something I'm excited about, and I hope that you guys will be as well. Go ahead and discuss. Do we have any comments or questions, or do we want to just move this on up?
So,
yes, Councilmember Oaks, go ahead.
So, in the middle of each of these alternatives, I got it. This is one of the alternatives. Is the old library, and I think it almost seems in my mind that one of the first steps in going forward is what's going to happen with that facility. Am I wrong with that? Just don't bring it up. Just don't bring it up. But because
you're not wrong in that. I think they go together. I think
okay.
they do go together. Go ahead, Shane.
I was just going to say, in my opinion, you're right. This is all kind of hopefully coming to a head as the next council meeting will be a presentation by the consulting firm that did the study on the library. Okay. And that won't be D-Day decision day, but it'll be, I think we'll have a lot of information to where we can make a good decision. And I would think, of course, before we do turn any dirt or tear up some asphalt, we need to know if it's staying, is it going, what's happening with the library. So
okay, and I wasn't aware that it was that imminent, but because I think that determines which, on the alternatives as you go through, what. Okay.
No doubt.
Perry, you're exactly right. It will. And this plan, even if anything changes and we are able to implement any of this, it won't even happen until 2024 or 2025. Maybe it's a long process still. But at least this just moving it to an action lets us continue to.
Yep.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Councilmember Jackson.
I have a question. Is there any data on how far people are willing to walk to shop, like along Main Street? Like, is there an option to put diagonal parking on 100 East? Every time I drive down it, I just think it's criminal how wide that road is. It's so wide. And I'm I'm curious if we did put diagonal parking, is that too far away? Would the data cover something like that? How far will people
I don't know
walk?
about data. Melinda, do you know anything about data?
Well, I not data, but I think it just depends on the type of businesses you have down here. Because
Yeah.
there are businesses that do bring vitality and do bring a lot of activity. I think you all would agree over the past, let's say, 6 weeks or so since the ice cream shop has been open, there's a lot more activity down there. So I wouldn't necessarily say that there's data on how far people would walk, although I think a quarter of a mile generally is what's used in the transit world, that you need to have a stop at least every quarter of a mile for transit routes. But I think it's more desirability of the businesses that you have and that you attract, and that is what motivates you to be a little bit inconvenienced with parking to get to a destination.
Okay, I totally agree.
I have another question too.
Go ahead.
Would it be possible, because I noticed like this parking area here between the police station and City Hall, that's open for off-street parking. Can we put a wayfaring sign that says Main Street parking with an arrow, even though this is government property? Is that, because I think if we can help people to know where to park closely, they're more inclined to shop down here and bring more business, so.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
I'm sure
I
we could.
think when we finalize what it is we're going to do, that you absolutely will want to have wayfinding signs. That's critical to getting people to the right place to park and to, then to get to the destination that they're trying to go to. So,
I said
absolutely.
wayfaring. Is it wayfinding?
A wayfaring is, wayfinding is
Okay,
the term.
okay.
Wayfaring is also
Is a
word,
company.
I don't know
but
how I came up with that.
may not have the exact
I was
same
with you,
meaning.
Nate. I thought I was going with it.
But that's definitely, an element of, and I believe that wayfinding is mentioned in the plan, but it is an element of having an easy to navigate environment.
Any other discussion?
I
Do we have a motion?
Just
Go
a
ahead.
little,
Oh, go ahead.
all I want to say is the businesses looked at it. I mean, maybe they weren't in love with everything, but if we want to get any money with UDOT, you have to go through this first process and adopt a plan.
Yeah.
Because if you don't get that, then you can't go to step 2 where you get to start applying for money. I think there's things that Kaysville City can do in the interim. Talking to the businesses, we've talked about striping some roads and maybe some one-way streets. Things that we can do that aren't going to cost a lot of money, that can make some changes. And that's really what the Main Street businesses said. Help us
Absolutely.
get some more parking close to our businesses. We think we can do that but we need a plan to get money. And
Well
if
said.
we don't get this plan, we're not going to get past step 1 to get to step 2, and you got to be to step 2 to start applying for money.
And
Perfect, yes.
that doesn't mean we have to agree on an alternative
No.
with those,
Nope.
because I think these 4 alternatives each have great ideas. And so, yeah,
They do, and you're right, Perry. This doesn't commit us to anything.
Okay.
It just gets us to the next point that we can actually have many discussions and move forward with it.
yeah, I think,
So,
I'm ready to make a motion.
are you ready for a
yeah.
motion? Okay. Go.
I'll make a motion that we move the Main Street revitalization, oh my word. Reset. I'll make a motion that we move work item Main Street revitalization plan discussion to an action item.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? No? Okay. Councilmember Oaks.
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. That will be an action item. Okay, the next work item is the general plan update discussion. And for this one, I'll turn the time over to Melinda.
Thank you. So I did want to, I know we went over this on June 23rd at our joint City Council Planning Commission work session, but I do just want to go over the fine points, or I guess the large points actually, real quickly again. We met back in February. The council directed staff to do some more editing on the general plan as it existed. So we made really no changes with content. Mostly it was reordering of items, elimination of items that did not need to be in a general plan. We condensed the guiding principles. We moved goals to the end of each chapter germane to what those goals were. The plan preceding this, the draft had one chapter consisting entirely of goals. We modified charts and tables. We took out the parks master plan, which is now its own separate document. We changed the orientation of the document, which I think just makes it easier to work with. We've cut the pages down from 168 to 90. And then I also mentioned that we still need to do a little bit of work with the appendix based on, to take the few items that were put into the appendix and include that in the total appendix from the previous draft. I mentioned at that Planning Commission meeting as well that we took some of the guiding principles. We had 10. Those were the 10 that we had. We condensed those down to 5. Taking those that were similar or had a similar goal, like creating a beautiful city center, enriching our downtown, and combining those. And then again, we changed the goals to just be at the end of the chapters, which I think just flows better. None of those goals were really changed. There were some that were redundant that we removed. And then I did just want to mention that we had a couple of property owners come in and request that their properties that they own be designated as a different future land use on the future land use map. We talked with those real briefly. This is the one just north of the Smith's Marketplace on Flint Street. And then the other one, which, let me go back, they wanted that to go to mixed use. You'll see that on the east side of Flint Street, there is mixed use. That brown color is mixed use. And so I think that would be appropriate. A larger question mark would be this one that Symphony Homes has requested, and they are wanting to have, I think, more flexibility with some density down there, and requested that be designated to multifamily. The West Davis corridor will be coming in down in that area, so that may influence the decision that you would make towards that. But those were the main points of the general plan that I think were outstanding. Hopefully the work that we did between staff and the consultant, we accomplished the bulk of the goals that the council sent us out to accomplish back in February. The conclusion of the joint meeting on June 23rd, we asked planning commissioners and council to email all comments back to staff so that the council could kind of go through line by line and discuss those this evening. So I do have another slide that just shows the comments that were submitted, and we can go through those however the council would choose to. And what we're really looking for is just kind of some final direction from the council on what changes to make or not make. And then we would bring back a final draft of the general plan and hopefully get that on an action agenda to be adopted.
Okay, thank you, Melinda. So on the table as part of our discussion is potentially changing that Flint property and the West Kaysville property to the future uses that the landowners are requesting. So that is something we could discuss if you are interested in doing that. Now, whether or not it is changed doesn't mean that the land use couldn't be what they're asking for at some future. So anyway, John, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I unfortunately I was out of town during the meeting. I apologize, but I did feel fairly passionate on that we not change anything on those two spots, and primarily because it's so evident that the developers or landowner / whoever they're trying to sell to is the one that's requesting that we make those changes. And I think in Kaysville, I mean, especially in Kaysville, like whenever there's a change in zone and people come out in droves, that's going to, one of the things they're going to look at is that we changed it for them prior to, and I think that right now, the way it is, we still can change it if it makes sense. But I think it would be very in bad taste for us to have this out here as long as we have, and then just to switch it because they requested it. It should be our plan, not their plan, right? So, I mean, that's what the whole system is, for them to come and try and change what we've put in the plan. And so I don't think that it's appropriate that they even make recommendations at this time, in my opinion. I mean, I could see a citizen saying that, but
Okay.
anyway, I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I think it'd be bad taste.
Anyone else? Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I just would like more information on the best way to move forward with that. I'm not necessarily against it, but I kind of agree with you, John. I feel like we need kind of need a little more.
Mayor, if I may, one of the things which I would recommend going forward would be a shift in the way Kaysville has done business in the past. If we adopt this plan that includes a future land use map, that is something new that Kaysville has not previously had. Other jurisdictions where I've worked at, you have the future land use map is what designates the type of uses you would have on the land. So it's kind of a broad category. So you would have residential. That would include everything from the A1 on up to R18. You would have, commercial, and some communities have a variety of commercial zones. So that future land use map really is saying, look, we anticipate that this property would be used as single-family residential. That doesn't mean we're setting an actual zone for that property. That's what the zoning map, which is the current use, dictates. So it can get a little bit confusing when you now will kind of have the future land use map is, hey, this is our 5-10 year vision or even 2-year vision, but the zoning map is what dictates the zone as it stands. So what I would recommend, and this would be, once we get this adopted, this would be a conversation I would come back and have with the council, but most communities go through what's called a general plan amendment. And when a developer or whoever looks at a property and says, here's what I want to do, and we say, well, sorry, it's not designated for a commercial use. So you would have to have the general plan amended to change that to a commercial use. Then the second step of that would be, okay, then you would have to rezone it to like we have general commercial, I think we have city center commercial. So then we would come back and say, all right, which specific commercial zone do you want to have that zoned? Most communities also will do concurrently a general plan amendment and a rezone. But it does add another layer of protection to the community of where we talk, before we ever talk a zone change, and a zone is set, which gives them entitlement based on the zoning code, we talk that future land use category. And so that gives another platform for the council to come back and say, look, we appreciate that you paid your application fee and we're having this discussion, but based on everything that we put up in the general plan, we don't feel like it's appropriate. Or you could look at it and say, you know what, since we put this general plan into place, a number of factors have changed. We've had a pandemic, we've had a large store vacancy, or we've had something change that's a catalyst that then, as Councilmember Blackman was talking about in the June 23rd meeting, we then come back and look at this document as not something that's set in stone, but something that's a living document. So that's how, so whatever your prerogative is on that future land use category, if you don't want to, look at the requests that the Flint family has put in, and then Symphony Homes actually owns a portion of that property, that's totally fine. My guess is that then a couple years from now, they would come and they would submit to the city then a general plan amendment, and we would go through that process.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think that was so eloquently said, because I think that, to me, at least based off the fact that we've had the map looking the way it is, and you look at that color, I mean, it's all yellow, right? So all of a sudden someone comes, the developer comes and says, hey, will you change this? Because it's really going to help our argument in 2 years when we come to you and we want to do this. It's like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see what's going on there. And for me, onus is on them to convince us to change that. The Flint Street, I get it. Like, I love their plan, and I told them, I said to them, I'm like, I don't think it's a good idea to change it now, because you guys are going to have an uphill battle with neighbors to begin with. And if the first person that posts on Facebook, oh, look what they did, they went and got the city council to change the zoning on the map. Look at this old map, and they'll do a side by side, and it's like all of a sudden the evil city was, we were in on it, and we were backdooring the whole thing, and you know what I mean? And so, whereas if it's not that way, and they come in and they do their due diligence with the neighbors, and then they come in and they show a plan that has some mixed use, which I think is appropriate there, and I think they could, like, the way they have it set up could look really good. Then it's like all on the up and up. Like, there's no, I don't know. To me, it seems a little shady to do that right now, and especially where we've had it out for so long in those two spots for me.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, quick question too. I think it would be really helpful to know exactly where West Davis corridor is going and the on and off ramps in relation to that, because I think that absolutely plays into the future land use, that we have to think ahead, like, do we want people driving all the way over here to get gas when that's the freeway they use to go to and from work? And so I think we do need to kind of look ahead, at least where people get on and off.
Yeah, I had looked at getting the shape files for that future land use map so that Jordan could, so that we could manipulate the map when we need to, when the council changes things. But one of the thoughts that I had was that we should have some type of an overlay of where that West Davis corridor is going through and where those interchanges will be, because it is very relevant to the discussion. So that's something that we can look at adding into that future land use map, just so, because being still fairly new, I still kind of have a hard time visualizing where those interchanges are going to be and how that's going to impact.
So just for my clarification, moving this to an action item continues our discussion, but it would not, but if we wanted to make any changes to the current map, we would make it at this point. Is that correct? And then it would go to an action item?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think what we were looking for tonight is enough head nods, at least three,
Okay.
on each item.
Okay.
Either way, a no or a yes.
Okay.
And then we would go back, make those refinements to the plan,
Okay.
and bring back a final plan for the council, probably in August to adopt.
Okay. All right. Head nods. To change the Flint property.
I think
Nodding?
No.
Okay.
keep the plan.
Okay, how about the other property? Is it Symphony?
That's a bigger no.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I think you have your direction. All right. Yes.
There is one thing at the general plan that I'm not so much about all my little other things, other than I think it's crazy to have a 2-lane highway and 4 lanes coming in 2 directions, filter into 1 lane, and have that on your general plan map. I just think that's
Was it just
crazy. No, it's in there.
Okay.
Wait, can you explain that in more detail?
Okay, we have 4 lanes coming, we have 2 lanes coming.
You're talking about Main
from
Street.
Layton. We have 2 lanes
Yeah.
coming from Layton, 2 lanes going away from Layton. We have 2 lanes coming into Kaysville, 2 lanes going out of Kaysville, all the way up. But the Main Street in those, where'd those pages go?
Those renderings.
Come on, bring that back, can you? But, I'll bring up that.
So
But
this-
it
in
shows
the
it
one we just
filtering to
approved.
1 lane. That doesn't make any sense.
And that's on 200 North?
That's on Main Street.
Oh, on Main Street, okay.
Can you pull that up again? that
Which isn't
map?
going to be the main, are we fixing that? I thought we
Well,
were
I'm
fixing
hoping that when we
I thought
Because
that
we
would
have enough
change.
right-of-way that when we finally get the property over there on the west side of Mutton Hollow and Main Street,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we widen our roads to match the ones that come into it from both sides.
Yes.
But if you look at a couple of the drawings, you'll see that it was only one vehicle lane in one of the directions. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Funnel 2 lanes into one and
Yeah.
have that in your general plan. I
Okay.
don't think that makes any sense.
You know, I have to say that I was down at Zion's over the holiday a month ago, and with so many cars coming in, the cars actually moved. And so I think there are probably ways to get around that, but just to add to that, I would be more concerned that has parking been considered along Main on an angle, at least on one side of the street? Or
Yeah, it's part of the Main Street revitalization. That was the
On Main Street.
no, I mean, I know
no.
that, and there are certain areas for it, but like if you look at this picture.
I don't think UDOT will ever approve
won't let us
reducing
do
the
it.
number of lanes because
They won't, okay.
they would. But we own from 200 North, which
So-
is part of Main Street.
Yeah.
And according to that drawing, we would be taking 2 lanes into one in one direction.
I see what you're saying.
And I don't think that,
Just on the north side?
I don't know which this is
Okay.
a drawing.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense to me because it really, ultimately, you're supposed to move traffic. They're going to be busy roads. I don't want to take 2 lanes into one and have that in our general plan because all this is a bottleneck for cars.
Okay, what does that mean if we fix that?
One thing I would suggest is just that, to me, as your staff who's going to use this plan probably more than anybody else, the content that's going to matter the most is that future land use map.
Right.
We've already determined that's set.
Okay.
The next content that's going to matter the most is going to be those goals, the policies, whatever you want to call them, those goals and
Okay.
objectives. You know, to me, some of the semantics, wordsmithing,
I get it. I just can't imagine why we want to keep those maps in there.
So are you suggesting we take those
Just
out?
take those 2 maps out because there's
Both of them?
there's 4 drawings. There's 2 of them are really nice and they have all the sidewalks, but 2 of them bottleneck all the traffic into one lane, coming
Mayor?
from one way.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
Shane.
thought maybe we were going to go one by one and say, here's the recommendation.
Okay.
Do 3 of you want to do it, or
I would
not
prefer-
3 of you not want to do it?
Yeah.
And then
Are we
can
gonna
just
go
keep
down
going
each
through
one
all-
of these?
And Councilmember Blackham's thing is the 4th one down there.
Yeah, and actually out
And
of
if some of them need explanation, that's
yeah,
fine.
and
but-
all of mine, out of all of mine, the only one that really matters to me
That's
the
the one you-
most
you
is
like
the
the-
number 1 one that says this Kaysville
Okay.
General Plan is a guideline and not a mandatory document.
Okay.
As long as that's in the front of it,
Okay,
I don't have a problem with really any of it too much. I mean, there's a lot of things I don't like, but as long as I realize they're not mandatory,
okay, you
I
want
can
that
live
in
with a
there.
lot of things.
Melinda, was that your intention to go one by one? I did not know that was the plan.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that makes the most sense.
Okay, let's-
But whatever the council's preference is.
Then I'm sorry I put so many comments in. But I read it.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, number 1, how do you guys feel about the first comment? Good?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So on that one, I'll just look to see where that fits the best
Okay.
and add that in.
I believe we want it on the first page.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So I should have brought
Do you
my
wanna-
general plan to.
Do you want to lead this? Do you want?
Yeah, sure. So the next comment on there then was page 7. And if we need to go back and forth, I should have printed that out so I could toggle easier. But page 7, first paragraph, yeah, remove the word blueprint and change to guide. I did think that coming from someone who spent their entire career kind of looking at blueprints, it's like that is a very specific meaning to you, Councilmember Blackham. Happy to make that change.
Okay.
I will say
We're
this,
good with
that
that.
I applaud the council for understanding the vision that a general plan is a living document. It is meant to evolve over time and change.
Right.
So I appreciate that the council understands that.
Commercial.
So sounds like
Nods,
page
okay.
7, we were all on, I got head nods there.
Yep.
Page 16, commercial,
Will to
will to
could.
could.
I'm good with that. Good. Not a
Can
mandate, right?
can you switch to page 16 real quick?
Yep.
I just want to make sure.
It says, a small neighborhood scale commercial nodes located near highway exits will provide essential services. I put could provide essential services.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, could or may, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
may or
better.
could. Okay.
Oh, so it's right there down there
Okay.
at the bottom.
So that will be could.
Okay. Okay.
Remove the
And
drawings on the
then
vehicles.
Pages 46 through 53.
Those are the ones we,
Actually,
already
wait,
talked
can we
about
go
that.
back? Sorry.
Yep.
A little slow there. So changing the will to could, that implies to major on and off ramps on the West Davis corridor, or?
I think it just softens.
It just softens it. It just
Make it
allows them to come and tell us what they think is
Doesn't make it
better there.
mandatory.
It doesn't have to be a
Okay.
service-oriented
Okay.
business.
It just makes, gives us more flexibility, I guess.
shall.
Okay.
Yeah, and this section here, again, it's referencing this future land use map, which I will say this, I don't prefer the terminology that they've used here where they've called them character areas. I think it makes more sense that really we're talking about a category here. So when we look at this future land use map, it's all mostly yellow. But when we look at our actual zoning map, we know that yellow is actually composed of 10 different colors of each individual zone, but they're all single family. So then this portion of the plan is essentially kind of defining or saying, in general, this is what, or not in general, but single family residential consists of this, multifamily, commercial, mixed use. So that's what this portion is saying, and then I think the change to just softening that from will provide is, it may not. We hope it would provide essential services, but in the end, right, we don't have any control over the property, and we'll.
I
See
do
what
get a little
happens.
bit concerned about that, though.
You do what?
I am a little bit concerned about that because major roadways, and especially where folks are trying to get on the West Davis corridor, I'm a little worried just to leave all that yellow over there. I think we need a little more foresight and strategic planning, at least as a council, to realistically look at what would be most beneficial. I would hate to do just hodgepodge, allow people to come to us. I want to be really on top of this and allow
Yeah,
our city to move around more easily.
Another project that's been out there and is relatable to what you're talking about, Davis County got some funding and has been working on a corridor study over there. The interchanges and what type of uses would be supported over there, even details of like how many square footage of different types of uses would be sustainable in a community and in those nodes. So that's something that I think will be presented to the council in the next couple months. We can look long-term at some of those areas and even do like some small neighborhood area plans. We could look at getting grant funding to look at those if it made sense to do that. A lot of times your general plan will kind of define areas that do need to have more definition, like our Main Street, things that we're looking at, right? We're piecing those things together. So we can look at that in the long term, and I think some of the information that Davis County has been working on will be relevant and address some of the questions you have.
Okay.
So looks like then we had the head nods on that one.
Okay, yep.
Okay, so the drawings on 22 and 23, those were
I'm
we
okay.
just talking about?
I think we're okay.
To take those out?
You guys
Okay.
okay with that? Those, okay. Removing pages 46 through 53.
So let me go back
yeah,
to that.
let's look at that one, 46 to 53.
It's just data that gets outdated after the first year.
Oh, yeah, I think I might have put some, okay.
Okay.
I think,
I think some of
I
it
think
helps
it
give
should
context for what we
remain
were
at a minimum in
discussing.
the appendix.
I actually
I
think we should
agree.
leave
I
it,
agree.
even though,
It gives us context to why we,
If I'm reading the general
Planned what we
plan
planned.
5 years from now, I don't want to see outdated data.
well,
Very
you want to
bad.
know where we were at, don't you, 5 years before, when we planned it?
I would prefer we just
Oh,
leave it
okay.
in and then approach it 5 years from now.
Okay.
As the best method to.
You said your recommendation would be to move it to the appendix?
Well, I would not remove it entirely. So if the council was debating between two options, I would say it would be leaving it in the plan as is or moving it to the appendix. It's very common to have this type of data in general plans, and yes, it does get outdated, but that's why you continuously update. I mean, you update, good practice is to update your plan every 5 years. So, maybe we're back here in 2027 updating this, and we already have that continuity of data, whether it's here or in the appendix.
Well, it's nice to know. It's nice to know what you're going to be updating too. I guess if you don't keep it in there, then 5 years from now, we just reinvent the wheel on what data we want to look at. But I also think to the effect of, making the document less, in the appendix would be fine. I don't see it.
You good with that?
For a data-driven person, they love going to the appendix.
Yeah.
One question with that though, like, would that take staff away? Like, how much time would
How much
that take
money will
away
that
from
cost?
other things? Like, is it worth it?
What do you mean, to cut and paste it
Yeah.
in the appendix? Is it?
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I mean, honestly, we'd have to go back and have the consultant do some more formatting. I
I
don't
wonder if
have
it would
the
take it out of
program.
context if you just cut and pasted it though, versus leaving it how it is. So,
I don't have the program that this was created in to do that, so we'd have to do some more shuffling with the consultant.
I would say leave it because it will probably just cost more money. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
How much
it's.
money is it going to charge to
But
cut
as
and
I
paste
read
it?
it, it talks about Kaysville housing, burden housing, it talks about affordable housing right now. It gives all current data, which is already outdated.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So I will also say this, though, that with the focus that the state has had on attainable housing and housing affordability, I think that part of the intent with having this section be bulkier is to try and meet some of the expectations that the state has set with their requirements for the general plan in addressing the moderate income housing.
It's just going to change.
I don't have a problem with it.
With leaving it or removing it?
I-
Either way?
Flip a coin,
Okay.
so.
How does everyone else
I'm-
feel? It's okay
I
in?
think it should stay
Okay.
regardless in the appendix if it would be taken out. I would say if you don't have the ability to properly take it out, formatting all that, it's not worth the effort.
Okay, so, John, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree with Barry.
Okay, we have 3 that are in agreement that it's okay to stay. Yeah.
All right, so that then would bring us to some of the planning commissioners' comments. Cody Branch, let's see.
I think that's,
So he's saying, there isn't a whole lot of definition to what the city center is considered to be. But, again, and having long-term vision, like we may want to do an actual downtown city center plan. We have some of those pieces that we're working on in place right now with the Main Street, with we've been looking at trying to get a community reinvestment area put together, some of those moving pieces. I think the general plan would be nice to have that as an element to take to the county to say, hey, look, here's some of the things, long-term goals. I don't know what the council's thoughts are on that comment.
Actually, I like that comment. I do think it may be slightly limiting. But I agree with both having city center in there, but also put a little soft language as far as like along Main streets
Street.
and whatnot, just to give us flexibility.
I don't know, there is a map here that says city center concept.
Yeah, I think yeah.
I don't know where it's not defined.
What do you guys think?
Oh,
We okay with it or as is?
It's pretty much Main Street, 200 North, down to Freeway and all the way out to North Main,
What page are you looking at?
18.
18?
I mean, city center to me is Main
Street.
Street and 200 just along,
That's what I would
between 15 and Main.
consider it to be.
And I think we should have a little more broad. I agree with Cody.
Well, that's not what the survey results
Yeah,
came
that's
back.
what the
I mean,
survey
that's like,
said this.
that's the only reason. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I think they did a great job of
Defining it with the survey.
defining it with the survey, and if we're gonna,
And the survey wasn't specifically Old Main Street. They said North Main
It-
all
Yeah, I
the
think
way
it's just
to
the language
border.
that,
Yeah,
could be misinterpreted maybe.
yeah,
yeah. Okay, so are we okay leaving it or changing it?
I'm okay leaving it.
Leaving it?
I'd leave it.
Leaving it, okay, so 3 to leave it.
Okay.
You want to change it, but you lost, sorry.
Not all is lost, because
Somebody
there,
else has to read page 6
there
or
is a
7
global plan
pages because
coming
you
together,
guys so
right? We'll
outdated statistics.
we'll talk
John,
about the
that was a
library,
soft-
we're
that was a
talking
soft
about Main
letdown.
Street. It's
Sorry,
all,
no.
Okay.
Okay, so, Commissioner Branch brought up the fact that he felt like having the word policy felt like him, or to him felt a lot more restrictive or committed versus having the guideline or goals be called, or policies be called guidelines, not rules or policies, so.
That seems to be in line with what Councilmember Blackham said up front.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true. Okay.
So we
good
like
with
that one.
Yeah, anything that softens it, I like it.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Councilmember Blackham, donuts soften things too. I'm good with those.
Donuts.
Okay.
I could have got those pages out.
We're going for soft serve ice cream tonight.
So we're on
Right across.
Doxy.
Jared's, right? Mostly his was just an opinion, right?
Oops.
It's not really a change. He just wants to focus on the fact that we put a lot of relevancy into this survey.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's something, I believe this process started back in the beginning of 2020. Is that right?
It's been
So, I think he feels a lot of ownership because he's been here for the entirety of that time and the Planning Commission was involved. Those of us that came to this city in these positions in January, I think it's a good reminder for us that.
Who's he talking about? I wasn't there.
I'm not sure who he's talking about, but he doesn't really have
We need
a
names.
Oh, I'm sure it's
change.
me.
He's just making a point.
Yeah.
It's
So,
okay. I still think it's a general
yep, and that's your,
guideline, not a mandatory plan.
And the way we look at it too is we gather information from the public, which is absolutely important and essential and a key part of this. But that doesn't neglect the other data that we need too. Because sometimes folks may want one thing, but the data says clearly
Right.
this would be better. Then it's our job to try to explain that and see what works best. And so it's very important, but we also have to consider a lot of other
True.
variables. So.
Okay.
true. Abby's concern was she just felt like we were east side, west side. It kind of was dividing the city.
I 100% agree with Abby on that because we talked about it.
Okay, so
It's fine.
would she prefer it to be called west of I-15 or east of I-15 or
Just Kaysville.
just Kaysville? Okay,
Yeah,
I think when you're talking geographical location, if you say on the west side of I-15, that's fine, but I think we should probably
Just say
avoid
Kaysville.
saying West Kaysville.
Yeah,
you
okay.
know.
Where is she talking?
I think throughout the
exactly on
I
document.
think it throughout
It
it
says
it talks
52.
about,
Yeah, there's one point in the document that we looked at. I don't have it in
Said
front of
it's
me.
page 52, and I don't know exactly what she's
So
talking.
there is, let me do this. There is a
There
part
were
of
a
the
number-
document that says, no, why can't I
There were a few, when reading through, there were a few that talked, specifically, called it West Kaysville.
Yeah.
Or East Kaysville. And,
Yeah, right there, especially on the west
We
side.
did attempt to capture all those. I can
I think so.
go
I
back
think we- yeah.
through
Okay.
and make sure that we did. But it was here, where it says development activity within the city especially, it's just calling out the west side differently,
I think
and
that when you say that, you have to say west side.
yes.
That's how
And
you
then-
have to say
West
it.
Side Story.
Yeah,
No,
yes.
I think the way it's said here is actually
Thanks, Nick.
okay. It
Get
says
it.
on the west side, but even if it's on the west side of I-15, I think we should just try to avoid saying West Kaysville, East Kaysville.
Okay.
I think we're all guilty of it.
West side is still a little too,
Oh.
west side of I-15. I think we should just be
Be
direct,
specific, okay.
specific, because
But it's true, that's where the 300 acres are,
West of I-15.
west side of,
Yeah, but just not calling it West Kaysville, which.
yes, I think our,
that's fine.
I think our
agree- I agree
concern,
with you on that, but I just think we're all guilty of that. I've done it
Yeah.
for
Oh, I
the
do.
13 years I've lived here.
I do
So
too.
maybe we
A lot
could
of
look
people.
at just
Incorporate it? No.
restating that to just make it more apparent that the open acreage or the developable acreage is
Is
located
West of I-15.
West of
west
I-15.
of the I-15
Okay.
or in between the West Davis corridor and the I-15 versus,
Yeah, I think it seems like a nit, but I think the city's divided, and I think, if we just do our part.
Yeah.
It's little, but
But it means something because it is a big deal.
yeah, it
I
is.
mean,
Our little area.
In one of the
Okay.
news articles this week, I even noticed that it was referenced that the cheer company was in West Kaysville, title West
Yeah, West-
Kaysville.
As
And I'm
if
like,
it's a different city like West
it's-
Bountiful.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's.
The way you could wordsmith this, it just would change,
Yeah.
just wouldn't make
Okay.
it.
So we can fix that.
Okay, I will do some finessing on the verbiage there, and we'll
Okay.
get that to just clarify, because that really, it probably isn't intending just to be like
You're right.
more elite, but it is the reality of that's where the developable acreage is. So,
Okay.
okay.
Um,
And then
and then
Perry,
Perry,
Then I'm sorry.
that was addressed, sort of.
let's go, okay.
As the
so
guideline.
But I
and-
did read it page by page with a yellow
Thank
marker.
you.
good man.
So,
I've done that a few
appreciate that.
times
I
now.
really
I'm
did.
just glad you guys actually found stuff. I just read it and thought it looked good.
well, because you read it with your eyes closed.
It's how you
Oh,
used to
I
sleep
think, no, I think it's just you've read it a lot of times.
I just
We've
read
looked at this
things,
for
I
2
must read
years.
things differently than you.
So this was, Councilmember Oaks, this was in
That's the same one.
Consistent with
That's
what
exactly the same that we've already addressed that
Councilmember
one.
Blackham was
Yeah.
saying. Page
Conservation.
15.
Well,
it's-
and I think even in my comment, I talked about a conservation subdivision. I don't know what that means, and so should there be
definition.
a definition in there? And that's,
We could, so conservation subdivision would be subdividing property in a very strategic way to either preserve open space or preserve some type of a feature that exists so that we
More
don't,
chocolate?
we don't, I mean, maybe you have a bunch of,
No, that's fine.
I don't know, very well-established trees that are in a ravine, and you don't want to lose the trees. So instead of doing a traditional subdivision where you just kind of take the acreage, you would look at strategically spreading that out, and maybe lots sizes or shapes are a little bit different, to then conserve that particular area that you're concerned about.
yeah, and I'd never heard of it before reading this, and that's, it's sort of more my ignorance, and I'm probably not the only one out there. And so that's,
So add it as a definition?
just
Okay, we can do
just
that
a
easy,
thought.
right?
yeah, I had the same confusion, but I want to save our trees, and after you explained it to me, totally on board, so.
Yeah, and it could even be something, something like you want to conserve or place a conservation easement on property that you want to have a future mixed-use, multimodal pathway.
Yeah.
So you put you put that conservation easement in. to say like, hey, we want to have like the Jordan River down through the Salt Lake Valley. They want those pathways all through there. So they'll put a conservation easement, or as the property develops, you just conserve that area so that it gets encumbered for the trail versus buildings and parking.
I would recommend we don't add anything extra and just I just Googled it and that was pretty
That's
cool.
fine.
Like, it gave me the definition, so.
Okay.
Just because, is that okay, Perry? I don't mean to shoot you.
No, like I say, I'm going through here and I'm just writing down
Yeah,
questions
right, and,
because,
yeah.
And I see what you wanted to know is what we actually want. I think that is what we want. We want more of that like natural look, right? We don't want them to tear the stuff down, so.
Cool. Page 18, second paragraph.
okay. Looks like, Nate, I got shut down on that one, but that's okay. but I'm okay with it.
Okay, so let's go look at page 18 then. And let me go back to the comments. So it was bold actions that we'll take in these areas, or if there's a draft plan. So some of the bold actions you're talking about, right? Like it's saying, oh, hey, around Flint Street and Deseret Drive will include new land uses and replacement of car-ended roadways.
Yeah, my question is there a draft? Is there real thought behind the comments in there? And I don't know.
So what I would interpret this to be is that we may want to look at creating a new zoning code that would allow for these types of things. So a general plan also will give direction to the council and staff to look at diversifying some of your zoning code or amending it to be able to accomplish some of these things. So where it's talking about, having some of these different type of uses over here, is that something we'd want to do? It may be, it may not be, it may be something that we just never get around to either.
Yeah, I love it if there's bold ideas and things we may want to do. My real question as I read through it, it says, will include a number of bold actions. Have any of them been thought through? And if not, then that's fine too.
Yeah. Well, and this also too, I mean, let's say that a developer assembled a bunch of properties and came in and says, look, I've purchased now half of a block in this area, and I want to redevelop these properties in the existing homes. We could come back and reference this and say, look, this is the type of ideology that we'd like to see implemented there. So if you are going to develop, then you're going to need to allow for some greenways and some pedestrian
walkways.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it does give us a little bit more leverage. I think the likelihood of something like that happening organically.
Not in the near future.
No, but what you
downtown
mean
here
is
along
that-
Main Street, yes, but in other places,
Maybe not.
it's going to be more of a
No,
challenge.
I think that makes sense a little bit. If I'm understanding, it's like we want to get a bike path someday from the West Davis corridor to the east end of Kaysville City. We know it's going to go along 200 North, and as those properties develop, is that something we can require them to implement in
Yes,
their
yes.
development?
Yeah, and then the continuity of, so they come in and say, all right, we need a general plan amendment, we need a zone map amendment, and I say, okay, but here's the things we're going to require. And then, we may get into conditions of the zone change with a development agreement or whatever. So it does give us a little bit more leverage to go back to a developer and say, here's the things that we want. It's called out, it's spelled out right there. That doesn't mean that if it's not in there, we can't do that anyway.
Okay.
Is it the word bold? Should we just remove bold and just say actions? Because I don't know if that would get people up in arms or make them concerned about what we have planned.
Like I said, my question was not as much on the language, but is there something behind the verbiage?
I think so. I think it came from those surveys in the sense that people said that they wanted to have some type of more of a walking community type section of the city, and that's the only undeveloped, like really undeveloped portion of our city
Yeah.
that also isn't surrounded by already built homes.
Yeah.
And so I think these guys, when they went through, they said this would be your perfect spot to have this,
Kind of what we're looking for
this
there.
kind of like mixed use, like people could walk around, ride their bikes around,
Okay.
fiddle fart around, whatever.
Well, and that probably goes to my question, the very next one, about community hub near Vasa. No real concept given, is there one? I guess it's almost on similar lines. So
Well, and I think they were kind of talking across the street,
yeah.
because there was some discussion about making that kind of a mixed use, more walkable, more commercial, so
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
that's where that came from. Okay. What do we
I
have?
go to 21. Yeah,
This is great though, Perry.
Kind of
This is
leave
awesome.
that as is then?
Yeah.
I'm fine with 19. Like I say, these are mine, as I'm reading through it, I've never read a general plans before, so I'm reading through it and things just sort of stand out. What does this really mean? And does maybe the average person doesn't ever read the general plan.
I think
but,
the average person does not
Yeah,
read the general plan.
I'm average. I've never read one, so.
No, this is awesome.
so-
Yeah, because it gets the conversation going about these things. I like it. So it's good.
Well, when it's 10 o'clock, you won't like it. So, okay, good press, sorry.
I'm
Okay.
gonna tell you, I am glad that we actually get together and talk.
It's great. It's a
So
great
this is-
discussion.
This is
Seems like that's
great.
the one thing a council never really gets
I know,
to
we don't
do
have a chance
is
to do.
Talk.
Okay, so sounds like page 18 we'll just leave as is.
I'm good with 19.
Okay. Page 21, let's look at the figure highlighted in yellow. Okay, so multimodal is another kind of, it's really more of a transportation term than a planning term, but it is both. Multimodal just means you would have the ability to have pedestrian, bicycle, all different modes of transportation. And, so you want to be able to have, and you think of even the evolution that some of the, 3 years ago, micro transportation was not a word. Okay, maybe it was back east, but right, I've been super surprised to see the scooters, the birds that we have
Yeah,
here.
and then they get used. I was shocked.
I did not see those in the 3 years I was working in Murray, in middle of Salt Lake County.
Wow.
But they're here in Kaysville. So those multimodal is just saying we're going to look at all sorts of transportation methods and try and incorporate them. So we want to maybe have bike lanes. We would want to maybe have sidewalks or a walking path where maybe you have a separation from the vehicle traffic or the bicycle traffic.
Could you go to the map then, real quick, so like on page, 2.2 or whatever, page 21. Okay, so, and that's where, so it looks like it's the overpass over on 200 North, and so I understand that, make it more white, but some of them are just like circles, and that's what I didn't understand, where it says improvements and just circles, because that doesn't seem like a bike lane or pedestrian path, because it's just a very small area.
So that could be also where you have a transit element too.
Bus stop.
A bus stop. So you would want to make sure that then your bike lanes lead to these points where you would have a designated transit stop. You would want to make sure that you have a walking path, the bike lanes to get to those transit stops. That would be my guess, that those are more those multimodal node improvements would be, that's where your transit stops are going to be coming in as well.
Okay. I guess that's why
Or
my
even a
question,
park
because
and ride.
it didn't make sense to
It'd
me.
be like, ride your bike there, get on the bus, go to work,
so
back,
nice.
bike.
Yeah, just done like a video game.
Okay.
Yeah.
A quick question.
Sims?
So beyond the yellow stripe beyond the freeway,
I
and
love that.
what about the rest of 200? both directions. Is that in the plan to designate striping for bike lanes? Because it is a wide road and definitely.
So I would have to look back to, the city did adopt in 2019 an active transportation plan. And that is where, like, this is your general plan, your active transportation or your streets master plan is going to have a little bit more detailed about an actual project. I have not, to be honest, I have not looked at that 2019 active transportation plan.
Now, I believe also the parks portion
Might have some of that.
includes the bike trails.
Oh, you're right.
And shows all of that 200 North, it shows over Burton Lane, it shows the 50 West Trail.
Okay.
And so it's in that portion, as I recall.
Yeah, and I spent my time on the,
Yeah.
And if there is additional information like that, I wonder if there should be some sort of marking on this, because that's one thing I'm concerned about when I look at transportation and bike paths. I see just little segments of yellow. I'm like, wait a minute, we need to make sure that goes all the way from, the west to the east and whatnot.
yeah, I guess almost,
Well, and-
we should go look at the
But if
Parks
it
and
does
Rec,
do
the Parks and
that,
Rec one, yeah.
And this also is just kind of calling out, this is the city center.
Yep.
So it's not necessarily, right, I mean, they're highlighting this area of the city and doing a myopic, or I guess a zoomed in view of this area. But we would want to, I mean, I think it's an overall goal between community development and public works, streets, to have where it's feasible and makes sense to have bike lanes and have sidewalks and those types of amenities. So this is focused more on the city center, but I don't think that then means that it's eliminating opportunities that we would stop those paths, right here at 200 North. We would try and continue those when those opportunities arise.
The other document that Melinda referenced actually has trail going all the way from this kind of area.
From the
all the way
off-ramp to
the
Main
200
Street
North
and then, okay.
interchange for the West Davis corridor, for
Okay.
example. But again, general plan, not really the time and the place to have all of our, trails highlighted. So
Yeah.
it references them here, so it's like, well,
Okay.
is this going to be
Okay.
where we
That's
do
helpful.
that? But it generally is not.
Yeah, and you do have, generally a city also will have several long-range planning documents. You would want to have your streets master plan, you would want to have your active transportation or your trails plan, your parks master plan. So I think this is just kind of focusing in then on the city center, but other plan has been adopted, and I can email that link out to the council
Yeah,
so
thanks.
you can see that.
I think our active transportation plan is on our website,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
so you can get it there too.
Okay, so.
Good deal.
My next comment's pretty easy.
Okay.
Like
Done.
I said,
I very much like the Golden Ball. Okay.
I mean, John's going to vote against it, but on that one, but it's still got a 3-1.
Right.
So page 28, let's look at that.
Shouldn't we? Ensure new buildings match the
Oh,
scale.
which implementation measure was it?
Goal number 3.
Let me change
Okay.
zoning in these areas.
Okay. So your question is that even practical?
Yeah. Well, and that's, I guess it sort of goes back, it sort of goes
Should the
back to
zoning
what
match?
Councilmember Jackson was talking earlier, because we have it, I think, as RA, shouldn't we change it? I think you've probably already addressed this in the comments earlier, but that's where mine came from.
Sure. And I think that this does, part of what to me this goal means is that we do look to our neighbors to have open dialogue, right? We're
Yeah.
looking at that connector road down there between us and Farmington.
I agree. I mean, I like this, and it does give it leaves the option. It may allow somebody to put commercial
Yeah.
in there. It doesn't say you
But
will.
it doesn't
It doesn't
lock us into,
lock
okay.
us into it. It just
Yeah,
says
and that's
you
where
may,
I really appreciate the
yeah, improve the
conversation.
commercial. You know, you're saying the goals could be to improve that commercial. So if somebody wants to put a Maverick down off that interchange down there, we think that's a great service, then knock themselves out.
Yeah, and we'll bring that at that time, but, okay.
Melinda, quick question though. Like to Perry's point though, like if we don't follow goal 3 in the future land use, will it turn into a hodgepodge thing that we're just waiting for people to come to us, say, hey, we want to turn this into A, B, or C? And because I do think we need to be strategic and long-term thinking.
It could, honestly, because unless you have a developer that assembles property and has a lot of acreage and comes in with an overall plan, you do have your individual parcels that may develop onesie twosies. You know, I mean, I can think of some areas where there has been some hodgepodge development, but I think, you know, where you have, I mean, hopefully here what we have is some great community development and planning staff that can help guide and channel the development to be more unified.
That would be my hope and wish. I don't want to change the culture or anything like that, but I just want to think long-term of what's best for the community as a whole. And so I'll follow your recommendations and how to maneuver that.
Yeah, and two, I think that the goals, I mean, so and again, another way, we talked about how we would use that future land use map. Now we're looking at some of those goals. So if a developer was to come and say, look, I really want this property to be used not as residential as you have it, but as commercial. And then we would go back and we would look at, does it fit in, would making that change fit into these overall goals? Yes or no? And then what we do as staff is we look at, you know, we look at these goals and say, it fits or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, generally we're coming back and we're saying, look, this is a long shot. It's probably not going to get the support of a staff recommendation, let alone the support of the political body. So you may want to look elsewhere, other properties in the city, or you may want to look at a different type of project. But we use these goals when it supports the development to say, yeah, we should look at making this change. Does that mean we make the change? It depends. If it feels right, if it's the right time, if it's the right project. So that's where these goal sections would come in.
Okay.
Okay.
I appreciate that, thank you.
So it sounds like we're okay with page 28 then?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
6.1.
Did you do high density? Most of it is in the west.
A misconception of the high-density housing.
Well, and we've heard here in council, as we talk some rezoning, you know, people come in and, you know, call R18, you know, high density, and I think just misconception, anything lower, you know, and
2 units an acre?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is semantics. I mean, when I worked up in Pleasant View, that used to be all half-acre lots, and then the zone was put into place for the third-acre lots, and everybody who had the half-acre lots was flipping out and didn't want the people to come in on these teeny tiny third-acre lots. You know, I went from there in Pleasant View then to go working down in the middle of Salt Lake County. They have 6,000 square foot lots. They have R16, and that kind of blew my mind for a minute. So density can be a very, you know, I mean, depending on what your perspective is, but generally, low density is any single family dwelling. Medium density would be your townhomes. It might be some condos. And then you get into your high density, that's going to be more of your apartments, anything over 18 units per acre. I don't see that being very well defined in this document. In other documents, other general plans and other places, that has been better defined. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. right? Because Kaysville,
I
I
don't
mean,
either, because it's a relevant term.
it is, it
I
is.
mean, you can go to Afton, Wyoming or somewhere, and they'll tell you that a 5-acre parcel's just too small, you know, or you
Yep.
can go somewhere else, and
Yep,
so I think it's,
it is a
I
relative
can tell
term.
you, I was here when a half-acre lot in West Kaysville was absolutely ridiculous.
Small.
Small.
Yeah.
Completely, just ridiculous.
Yep.
So, I think it's just, it's, I guess, arbitrary.
It is, I mean,
And
I
think
think,
we're
I
better
think you
to,
really have like your, you know, your Kaysville definition of what density is, and then you have kind of like your, the words are evading me, but kind of like your planning, like your general guiding criteria of what low, medium, and high density is, right? I mean, high density is way different even
Yeah.
in downtown Salt Lake
And
than
I
it
think
is in
it's-
downtown Ogden.
and I do think it's better not to leave it specific, because I think as time goes on, people soften a little, and I think they're more open unless you try to shove it down there,
Okay.
throw it a little bit, but.
All right, you know, me personally, I struggle, because
Yeah, I don't know.
I have to go look up all the different, you know, designations and what they mean, and, so I just, you know, have the cheat sheet, and it's sort of almost, I don't want to say offensive, but it's like, come on, when you're, you know, I live in an R18, and it's not, anyways, okay.
And we could, I mean, we could have something in here that better defines, you know, it talks about the character areas. We could have something that says, look, all of these zones fall within the single-family, low-density character area,
I
but,
personally would rather not. I don't think a definition would
Okay.
help. I personally don't want a definition of it.
Okay. And again, mine are.
I think it changes.
I'm not hard over. There's a couple, you know, but it's more, these are the questions that come to mind as I was reading
I
through.
just don't, you know, I just hate it when they come and say, this is not medium density, this is not low density. Well, for
It
an
is to
area,
you.
it might be, and the people around it, it might be. I don't know, you know, that's why, but, I mean, I've heard developers tell me that 30 units per acre is not high density, but,
depends on where you're at,
Depends on
right?
where you're
Because
Yeah.
in, again, like in downtown Ogden, that's gonna be your high
yeah,
density.
I drive
In
up.
downtown Salt
You've been
Lake,
down to 4 South on Salt Lake lately and seen all the 5- and 6-story apartments
yeah,
going in?
in downtown Salt Lake, you're talking 80, 100 units per acre. That's your high
You know,
density.
and
Yeah.
Perry, are there any others on here that you absolutely, I mean, some of them, you, like you mentioned, were kind of questions as you were reading through. Are there any on here that you absolutely want us to discuss?
The very next one, I think, you know, I might get shot down, but I think it's worth discussing.
Okay.
The page 29, goal 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
you know, it's funny because I had
Yeah.
strike it.
Well, there's no way for us to, ensure
Yeah.
it's affordable.
And my recommendation would be leave that in there because of the state's requirements on having the affordable and moderate income housing.
And
Do we really have much control over that?
Right, no.
Yeah, we don't want the state.
We don't have any
Coming any
control
more
over
than
it,
they
but
do.
if it's required as part of our general plan.
Yeah. But that said, you know, if you want to take that out, that's your prerogative. But I think that really is what the state code is.
I get it, but I'm not afraid to take 8 out. I'm one vote to take it out.
Yeah. I just, you know, am I thumbing my nose? Are we thumbing our nose at state legislature? I just don't see how it's practical.
I think we should leave it in because there's so much pressure from the state,
John, it's
and we can do a lot here to fight back against.
We
Some
can,
of the
and I don't
housing
want
we
us to
don't
have
want.
to redo our plan to include
Yeah.
it when they come back and say you have to have that in there. And then we have to go through the whole process
Yeah.
again as an update, so.
Yeah, I would leave it in, and yeah.
I know
Okay,
it-
can we put it in size 6 font?
So I'm to strike it. Are you to strike it?
I would just, I
Okay,
would
let's
Okay,
do
do
to
you-
strike,
you
one to
just-
leave.
One to leave, John.
Oh, God. I gotta go to the bathroom.
Oh, you already did that.
No, I hadn't, I'm thinking out loud right now, right? thinking out loud. I understand where Mike and Perry are coming from in the sense that it's like not super realistic. I think, though, we all sort of agree with that. I also understand where Mayor and Nate are coming from in that, like, we want to show that we want to try and have that work. I feel like we do want that, don't we? I mean, we want, Mike and I have talked about how we would love if a developer would come in and build 1,200 square foot homes that were single level, right, Mike? I mean, we just like feel like there's none of those. There's none of those homes for like the
But do it right.
first family. Do it right.
Do it right, do it all
And make it
together
affordable.
and make it affordable, but also make it with amenities and things that
Right.
really are
People
amenities and not a
not just
detention
try-
pond over here, buffalo grass over there.
Yeah.
And
No,
Yeah.
but I guess what I'm saying is like, how does that, like our wishes that you and I have talked about that, how does that not line in with
I just think that
coordinate and align
when
land
somebody
use
comes
housing?
with that right one,
So-
we'll look at it.
I know,
We'll
so
do
like
it.
keeping this in there just says like, yeah, that's kind of one of our
That's what we're
goals is
encouraging.
for someone to come with that right one that will
I
do
just don't-
those things.
I think what I'm seeing is somebody coming and saying, look, your goal 8 says that you're gonna let me do this because I'm providing a lower income house here.
Well, that never
But then,
happens. 'cause
but
we
then
don't
what I
ever let
could
'em
do
do
is
it.
like pan up to goal number 1, 2, 3, 4 and say, yeah, but goal 1 is that it meets the needs
Well,
of the community. You know what I
See
mean?
where the vote goes.
Let's,
We move on.
Well,
let's,
Melinda, specifically, you made a statement that the state wants to see
State's gonna
this
keep
in
doing
the
what they're
plans.
doing no matter
So
what.
can you
Regardless of what
elaborate
we're
on
going to have
that?
to amend it.
I still don't think we have to do it for the state, but I also like the idea of saying like, yeah, one of our goals would be to have, we could put goal 10 on here to have world peace.
so you're a yes.
You know,
But we
I mean,
don't
we're gonna
have a-
strike world peace from our goals because it's not achievable. Like, I'm a yes.
Just
You're-
one
okay,
more,
so-
just one more point,
Yes.
because, I'm sorry.
No, you can't make a point after
Go
I've said
ahead,
yes.
go ahead, Councilman.
Just, meeting with the folks up at the state legislature and how much pressure is coming down and federal money's being pumped into the state on the condition that the state forces communities like ours to develop in a way that they want so that they can keep that federal money. That's what I'm really concerned about. And it's not,
I'm not gonna be
That
threatened.
seems like more of a reason to take it out.
Not me too. I'm
Well-
not gonna be
Okay.
threatened.
Okay.
yes, but.
So we've
it-
got 2 to 2, right?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to plead my case so we get a third vote.
Well,
For,
No, you got the mayor's, the third vote.
I get to break the tie, don't I? This is the first time I actually count on this council. Okay, I say leave it in. Okay, all right, so
Okay.
let's move on to
So
the
let-
next one.
An open view, so if you can go to page 30, goal 11.
Okay, this is
I-
what I was talking about earlier today with IT, that's, I don't know why this happens, but
Oh.
my.
Well, okay, so let me, it was
page
on, how do you regulate new developments to keep views open? Talk about open view, okay. View corridors and view sheds.
So we have on, I think it's our R1 LD, where we allow varied lot sizes as long as an overall average of lot sizes is maintained as, I think it's 20.
2 units per acre.
Okay, so a half acre lot. So essentially, what this goal would be is that we would look at our zoning code and say, do we have a code that supports that type of development?
Okay, so this isn't,
So
this isn't a view, so I have a view in my backyard to see in the mountains.
No,
This is
no,
a view
it
that I got
could-
neighborhoods that look symmetrical or something like that.
It
I
could,
mean,
it could
hey,
be. I
this
mean,
is,
it would be, this could be more like, again, a conservation subdivision where we have something unique, a characteristic or a trait of an area that we want to.
I'm good with it. Don't ignore me, I misunderstood.
Okay.
And the only other one I would say is page 45, goal 7.
Can you go back to that goal really fast?
This one?
Just Perry's comment on that goal.
Goal 11.
Oh, on this.
It's it's okay.
Kaysville
I've got it here. I can
Corridors
look
and
it
view
up.
sheds.
Okay.
The way she's explained, I misunderstood.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, it could just be that, again, we have maybe it could be another thing. Let's say we do have development that starts
Wave away.
taking place up in the foothills, but we don't want to disturb views past a certain elevation. So maybe we limit development past, maybe there's a canal, and we say, you don't go above a canal road, or you would say, okay, development's allowed up in this area, but we don't allow anything over 20 feet.
Okay. Okay,
So it could be a variety of outcomes to meet that.
all right. The only other one that I really have a question on then is map 4.2 shows the different public parks and begs a question of why the Wilderness Park is not a public park, and is there a story behind that? My very last one.
Okay.
Page is
Page
that?
60?
Page 60.
So
Page 60.
I would have to defer to anyone who's been here
Someone who has
longer
more
than me
history
to
than-
answer that question. It could have just been something that was,
I don't think, do we own that land?
Yeah,
The
we
Wilderness
own it.
Park?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Kaysville.
We own it.
Right,
Actually,
you got all the
it
other
should
public
be.
It's a
parks.
very public park.
yeah?
Why is it not called a public? Is there,
'Cause I think it's missed. I think somebody's missed it.
okay.
I think it should be added.
So are you talking about?
Well, if
the-
you just go,
just-
just go
there was
up on the
the
map.
list.
See
It's
the yellow
categorized
up
as
there?
open
Back-
space
yes,
rather
where
than
you
a
are,
green.
Right there.
Right here?
It says Wilderness Park, and then it's just open space, not park.
Is
It's
it
not darker
There's a
green.
bathroom there, but it's just
Oh,
dirt
okay.
trails
But
and a bike
okay, I see
trail
what you're
and-
saying. So,
So it should be a dark green, or not a dark green, a green.
okay, yeah, we can change that.
Maybe,
Because it
maybe this
is-
brings a little bit of perspective to this. When I was a kid, I was told that we were going to Yellowstone Park. And for 8 hours, I drove in the back of a station wagon facing the opposite way, thinking that I was headed to an
park.
amazing park with slides and swings. And it didn't end up being that. So maybe, just maybe, we're trying to make sure that people understand that this is more of like a wilderness experience. We're hiking and stuff, and that they won't go thinking that they can play beach volleyball.
To add to that,
That's
I
probably-
question, I like that point, and
My story.
yes.
If also,
So-
Councilmember Oaks, to answer your question, it may be something, because we've removed most of the parks section, that this is an oddity that's left and not well-defined. So I can go back and look at the parks section and see, but I think actually, Councilmember Adams, you're probably, they're trying to differentiate this between an improved park and a wilderness park.
Yeah, and there are a lot of funds coming down the pipeline in the state for trails and things like that. And so I worry that if we do change it as a park, we may not qualify for some of those potential grants that can improve the area.
And probably
so.
the fix here would be just to change the text here, instead of saying existing open space to existing
Wilderness
wilderness
park.
park.
It just
Okay.
stood out to me
Yeah.
as
Okay.
odd.
You may maybe just change the color of it in general and call it the Wilderness Park, because there is some of this other yellow down here that's
That is
open-
open
That is
space.
open
existing
space.
open
Okay.
space, yeah.
Yes.
So I
So
would just
change
have it
wilderness park to
pink.
green.
Yeah, green, whatever.
because it's a public park.
Or,
Got it.
or just change it to its own separate color and call it the Wilderness Park.
I mean, are we talking a zone or just a color?
Just an identifier.
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought
you all
the
okay?
zone, okay.
Are you okay if we make that change pending Melinda looking to make sure that the
There's not a reason.
definitions are matching up, that there isn't a very valid reason to have it different? If
Yep.
it's not, she'll just change it to green.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Okay.
Fine, whatever.
So I think then.
It's just like we're just hodgepodging everything, fiddle farting around, you know.
We are not doing that. We
No,
are being
I'm
very
I'm seeing
strategic.
if she
Oh,
types that in the notes.
Yes.
Okay, that was it for Perry's, right?
I'm going to need your notes. I'll have to go back and rewatch all this to make sure I captured everything. But, so I think then, council, we have covered the bulk of the points, and we have, I understand the marching orders. So what we will do then is spend the next few weeks refining these things, and we will bring back a final document to the council for approval, and I think probably in August.
So a motion to move this to
Right.
action with the recommended changes from this discussion would be amazing.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we move the general plan update discussion to an action item with all the recommended changes.
And I second that.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Any comments? Nope. Okay, super. Councilmember Jackson?
Hey.
Adams?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. Perfect. Thank you so much. This was absolutely fantastic that we've had all of these discussions. I don't know.
B.
Okay, we are moving on to work item C. Shane.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. Now that Juneteenth has come and gone, we have a little bit more feedback we wanted to present to the council about that holiday and some data. If you'll indulge me, I'd like to just give you some stats that something went out on what's called the city manager listserv that just hits every city manager, and they asked them to update. I think I even sent out the spreadsheet.
You did.
So if you took a look at that, but there were 75 cities that have approved Juneteenth as a holiday. 11 had not. I think there's probably less than 11 now, but at the time, or they didn't go in and update it, there was 11 that had not. 7 said they were going to reassess next year, which essentially I think is what we're doing today. Of the 75 cities, 66 added it as a new holiday. Some had as many as 14. Some had just 12. And then 9 of those gave up a day. So swapped it for a floating holiday, or the day after Thanksgiving was another one that happened, or Columbus Day was also one that I saw. And then a lot of them, I hadn't thought of this before, but a lot of other cities' HR manuals say, we recognize the state holidays. So most of these cities didn't do anything. The state approved it as a holiday. That automatically triggered by their manual that they recognize that as a state holiday. So I know we talked about this, and it was kind of like a decision we needed to make. And so I think in fairness to you, I wanted you to know that some of them didn't have to make a decision. They didn't even address it. It just became a holiday. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, you can make that distinction. But
Council.
Mary, I think you had some other things to add, please.
Sorry, no, I did not mean to interrupt
okay.
you.
No,
Are you done?
that's all I had, and
Okay.
I just wanted to give some of those stats. It's obviously whatever we did now or even in the future, we wouldn't we wouldn't have in play until next June anyway. But
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, I will hold my comment for a minute. Go ahead.
I just have a
Councilmember
couple
Blackham.
questions. One is, can you still not recognize Juneteenth as a day without having it be a holiday? For one, by doing special things in your city, like there's things you do for other days. And then the other one is, I have absolutely no interest of adding an additional holiday. We're already having a tough time meeting budget and getting all the work done. And with all the personal time off that we have, the holidays we have, I have no interest in, and I guess that's kind of where I need to get from the council right from the beginning, is decide, I have no interest in adding another holiday. If that's the feeling of the council or not, then we need to figure out what's the next step.
Right, and Shane, you've got some suggestions there.
I do know that there was one city, I think it's North Salt Lake, that did recognize Juneteenth as a holiday, but did not close their city offices. So they did some kind of a celebration. So that's totally true. I don't think we've done that for any other holiday, but I think that has happened. And yes, and we can remove a holiday, we can do nothing, and there was a couple of cities in there that actually approved the holiday, but I think they had similar sentiments as Councilmember Blackham, and they removed 8 hours of personal time off. So, which is something else we could do. We just, you're taking this holiday, and that might work for us. I mean, that would be fine with me, and we could take a straw poll here of staff members. But for our police department, we actually give them holidays, much like they have, much like their personal time off. Police officers can't take 4th of July off. They just can't do it. So they can use that another time. So it's almost like personal time anyway, so that might be 6s for them and allow us as a city to honor Juneteenth as a holiday. But closing the office is the challenging part, I guess, and so that's if we wanted to close the office on June 19th and then have 8 hours less of personal time off, I think we could do that. That's one way we could do it as well.
I have a question.
Go ahead,
To that
Councilmember
point.
Jackson.
So if we hire a new employee in the city, I imagine they have 2 weeks right off the bat of personal time they can take. How does that compare to a longtime staffer? Is additional time built up over the
Yes,
years?
you get a certain number of hours for your
Okay.
tenure. So 0 to 5 years is a certain amount, 5 to
Okay,
10.
and that would be my concern then. It wouldn't really affect the longtime staffers, but these new or younger staffers, yeah, I mean, I absolutely support this, making it a holiday and recognizing it as a city. I also think there's a component that when the Department of Defense, when they look at bringing work to Hill or the surrounding area, they absolutely look at issues involving race and the community and acceptance. They also look at transportation, housing, schools. And I can't remember what it's called, but it's a lot of the higher up folks at the Pentagon use that to make their decisions to send work to Hill or whatnot. And so I do think there is kind of a factor of that plays into it that could negatively hurt us or this region potentially. But besides that, I think it's a great idea to recognize this, and it's a good discussion starter too with our kids and whatnot. So.
I absolutely agree with your comments, and I was just going to, I also agree with Councilmember Blackham in that we are a small city. We have a smaller budget than other cities. So I would really recommend that we adopt it as a sort of a tradable holiday, so that if someone wants to take Juneteenth off as a paid holiday, we let them have that opportunity and they can trade it with a different holiday that maybe is not as meaningful to them. I don't know that we have to close our city offices on that day. I know, Shane, that we'd had discussions about possibly closing the offices on Juneteenth and not on a different holiday. So
We can do any of those things.
what are your thoughts? I really think that it's important to our community, and I think it should be recognized, and people should have the option. That's where I'm at.
I don't have a problem with recognizing it. I mean, as a nation, we're recognizing it. I agree with Councilmember Blackham on I don't think we need to basically fund another down day. Shane, your idea of doing that and then taking away 8 hours, I think that's viable. If I'm a city employee, I would rather have my latitude on taking vacation when I want instead of being told when I'm going to, and that would be my concern. But I think that's very viable. I think we gave it up to the city, the city employees when we discussed it earlier, and they chose we'd rather keep Columbus Day and not do that. What I worry about is that we're being pressured in by public perception. The article in the Trib, it didn't set well with me because it was, well, we're keeping an eye on these cities, and if they don't, we're going to force them, or we're going to put that pressure. I wouldn't. We have our city to run. We need to run it in our best manner. I like the idea. I think we have to recognize it. We are, but I don't think we need to have another holiday.
I have a question for Shane regarding what, Mayor, you brought up. So if we give certain employees the option, could we run the risk of key employees choosing to take it off and not having this building running or key things
That's on the
running
manager.
that affects the younger or other employees?
Sure, I think we could. We probably would schedule that. If it's a floating holiday and it's a choice between either two or any other holidays, we would need to make sure that we're covered for having one or both of those days. But we can do that administratively. That's not, so, I mean, there are, I think if you want a floating holiday, you would say, I want to take this off, and then we would have to evaluate the workload and make sure that's okay.
Hey, the thought just came to me, and this takes some thinking and some planning, but it's almost like, okay, there's X number of holidays. So this year, we're going to keep our office open on Veterans Day. Next year, we're going to keep them open on Columbus. If you just did
We rotate.
you rotate, so you keep the same number, but you do it on that. Just a thought.
Yeah, I don't care for that idea because I think people plan vacations far ahead. And Shane, I would like to hear from you. Like, do you think it would disrupt the workload? Because I'm inclined to just have it be a holiday and people take it off. Because
It's expensive.
in most jobs, we can really kind of get it done sooner. But I'm not sure with Public Works and Power how that impacts that.
I think we can manage it. I mean, what really is a key office is the city office. I mean, the police department can close easily. The public works can send two individuals home, and they're already out anyway. So really, what matters is City Hall. And administratively, I think we could break this up into two groups if we needed to keep the City Hall open. I think that would be not hard to do.
Would it be? Could we talk about it more and kind of get more input?
I don't
We-
like it.
You don't like what?
I'm trying to. That puts people in the position of, oh, you don't like Juneteenth, and you didn't choose Juneteenth. I don't like the idea of, I'm just trying to think about like from what others would say, maybe from their perspective of looking at what we're doing and forcing people to choose. I can just hear the news article right now that Kaysville makes people choose whether or not they support Juneteenth or not. Okay, so I don't think that's good. I think your best suggestion thus far is North Salt Lake, where they recognized it as a holiday. They didn't take it off, but they did something. I think that's cool. I think that's where we would get recognized. I think we could have, staff and stuff. Like one of the things that we were talking about, this is, again, before any of the 4th of July stuff, we were talking about, as we were planning it, that we have lots of things during the 4th of July. We have the movie in the park, we have the breakfast, and they're all concentrated in like 4 days. It's like when you have to go to the same family members' parties over Christmas, And the idea of, instead of doing that, maybe taking one of those things away and finding another day to do something fun in the city that brings the city together so it's not all concentrated. Well, this might be the perfect opportunity where we have, on Juneteenth, we have something that the city throws that's put together, but it's not necessarily a holiday for the city employees to take off. That would be my first suggestion. The second would be that we just drop one of the other ones and add this one. I think those are your two choices, in my opinion.
I would kind of like to see, I think I get the consensus. I think I'm getting a majority consensus not to add another holiday. But so maybe what we should do is send something out, because to the employees, because that's who it's affecting.
Well, they spoke. They said they like at least.
No, but now we're trying to do something and they haven't. What I'm saying is go out and say, okay, we're going to recognize Juneteenth. I like your idea. I personally like your idea. But I'd like to know from staff, say, would you rather celebrate Juneteenth in another way, but still keep it a working day, or would you rather trade it with another holiday?
Yeah, that's fine.
Officially recognize it.
Yeah, I think we should officially recognize it. I mean, anytime City Hall is closed, if someone has to make up time or something, they can come in and work, and it can count, right? Even if it's quote a holiday.
Sure.
Right? So I think as long as we give people the flexibility, it's not, we recognize that this is a holiday that the city recognizes, and we're respecting it. And if they don't want to work, they don't have to.
Great,
City
yeah.
Hall's open. If you don't want to work, you don't have to. I don't think it necessarily pits them against feeling pressure.
No,
I think what
I-
it does is
I
our
thought what
city
you were saying is
sets
that
a
we-
bad precedence if we don't do it.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
I think that it's disrespectful to
I
a
was just
lot
saying,
of
like,
people.
this whole, like, having to gather around and be like, okay, you're gonna take off Juneteenth, you're gonna take
No,
off
I
Columbus.
think it
you're
wouldn't,
gonna-
no, I think it would be up to the employee. And if
Yeah.
they want to work through every holiday, they can do that.
I think
I
the
don't-
key
I don't
is
know if they
knowing
can
that
actually
the
do that,
City
but-
office is open or not. So-
Knowing that the
We-
city
yeah.
office is open
we
and the
can
people
work
have the
on that.
option, and maybe, and then again, I think just us doing something to show that it's, that we're recognizing as a holiday is okay.
Yeah. So is that kind of the consensus? Does that seem fair to everybody? Okay. Would we like to see this as an action item so that we implement this?
I think the way to make it official is put it in our HR manual, so we have that as a holiday, even if we
Okay,
make
so
a
it'd come back
distinction
that
about
way.
what that looks like. I think it should be in there.
Okay, I will tell you all, I've had a lot of discussions with different employees in our city, and it does mean something to people that we recognize it.
Yeah,
It absolutely matters and gives them the flexibility. Some people, of course, would like to see it added as another holiday. I understand the expense that brings, I understand that.
Well, we all
But-
want more
but-
holidays, yeah,
but-
but
right.
somebody else is paying for it,
Right,
sure.
but it is a big deal, I guess is what I'm saying. And it's not just, it's not just playing into peer pressure because we were called out on it. It is a very big deal, and it's very meaningful.
I feel
people.
bad that that people think that because we didn't make it a paid holiday or a off
Mandatory
holiday, that in some way we were saying, well, we don't believe it's a holiday. You know what I mean? Like,
No, I agree, 'cause
in
I thought we
fact,
did a very good job.
I thought we were pretty, like we said, we
Yeah.
recognize
We had a
this as
very
a
good
holiday. We've looked out over, we've talked to, well, we thought we had talked to staff and and found that the consensus.
And
that
remember, we
people-
talked, it was a work thing. It's like, this is the summer months. We have a short time of summer, and you have the Memorial Day, you have the 4th and the 24th. Adding another in between there was kind of hard on some of the people's workloads and getting their stuff done. It's not that we're not recognizing it, it's just this is the optimum time for them to do a lot of the work they do in the city.
So how did we
Well-
not recognize, like basically by us doing that, we said we don't recognize it as a holiday?
We
We never
really,
said that.
We just didn't do
We
anything.
didn't- we
So doing
didn't.
nothing means it stayed the status quo.
and we
which was
also
not
didn't give
recognized.
people the option of taking it off.
Got
It
it.
wasn't-
I don't like
it-
the idea of not recognizing it.
Yeah.
I think we need to recognize it. This will blow up in our faces.
I don't think any of
That's
us
what
said
everybody's
that.
agreeing
Yeah,
with, yeah.
I think everybody's in agreement. We need
Yeah.
to
Okay.
recognize it somehow.
So an update to an HR manual would come as an action item? Is that
Yep.
correct? Okay.
Yeah, and do you want to know more from the employees, or is this direction good enough? Because we can do a.
This gives them the
straw poll.
chance, Mike.
I personally like to hear from the employees because that's who it affects.
Yeah.
It really doesn't affect us five.
So what would we do? Send out a survey?
So, yeah, we can send out a
Anonymous survey?
and have
Okay.
a couple of options and just see
Okay.
I could just get that data back to you. And
Just
then you
Okay.
could-
Yeah.
Email it out, tell
We
them if they're.
recognize it, but
Yeah.
what would you like to do? Have the option to.
I think the consensus is to keep the office open and to recognize it, and so how would you like that to happen? Is that,
Well, I guess if you wanted to do a survey, you could ask if people would rather switch it for, and you pick
Okay,
out
sure.
one of those holidays.
trade it still? Mhm.
Because then that, if that's the
Well,
case.
even if they want to trade it for PTO, maybe somebody would,
And that's a good
Dude,
option.
that's
a great
Because
option.
now that we've gone to PTO, Nate, you says 2 weeks, but they really have 12 days plus 2 weeks. They have 24 days, the day they are employed,
and,
right?
and just, I guess, keep in mind that there are a couple of our departments who, holiday and PTO is the
Doesn't-
same thing.
Right.
It is
So
the
I-
same thing.
If I have the option of recognizing this holiday, which is important and important to us as a city, I'd rather just switch it because it's probably all the same to me.
I mean, in reality, just want to make this clear, we have 12 hours that were sick leave that got converted to PTO, and we had, starting as an employee, we had 2
12
weeks,
days.
which was basically 10 more days, and then we had 12 holidays. So you really had about 34, I hate to do math, 34 days or so, or 5. already
okay
as
with that?
starting
Okay.
as an employee.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Do we have any council member reports?
I'm trying to think of anything that's just.
Come on, John, drag us
No?
on to 10.
No? 10 till 10. Okay, Shane, do you have a city manager report?
I just wanted to emphasize an email I sent to you today about a debriefing we're doing on Monday, and that you are all more than welcome and invited and encouraged to come if you can at 10:30 at the police department regarding the 4th of July activities.
On Monday.
So, if you can make it, that'd be great. That's all I got, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all right. Would someone?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks, everybody.